Here's a problem that already quite a few of you have told us about, but it is possible that a lot more of you could be affected too. Brand new homes right across Britain have been fitted with a system that its makers describe as the most efficient and cost-effective way to heat a home. Well, if that's the case, why are some of the people who have this system being sent electricity bills that are hundreds of pounds higher than they expected? Which means, in the case of the family that we're about to meet, having to choose between paying for food or keeping warm. Love's Farm is a 160-acre affordable housing development in rural Cambridgeshire. An idyll for eco-friendly living. At least, that was the idea. Samantha Clawson, her construction worker husband and their children were some of the first to move in May of 2010. They were delighted at the prospect of living in their brand new energy-efficient home, which they rent from a housing association.
We'd been repossessed in our previous home due to the recession, so to be offered this house on this new estate was a dream come true for us.
With another child on the way and the family counting every penny, there was one particular feature of the house that seemed especially appealing.
We were told we had a great heating system that was going to be economical and it was going to be green, which was perfect. We had a report telling us it was going to be around £500 a year for our heating and our hot water. It couldn't have been better, really.
And you can see why she'd think that. The energy performance certificate that came with the house couldn't have been clearer about how much they could expect to pay. So there was no need for the family to dread the arrival of their first electricity bill 2 months later. Or so they thought.
When our first electricity bill came through for £252, that was for just under 2 months, we were horrified.
At that rate, in another 2 months, their electricity would have cost them well over what they'd been told they'd be paying for the whole year's supply. Not quite as friendly, either to the environment or their pocket, as they'd been led to believe. So why were their bills so much higher than predicted? Sam's house, like the rest of the estate, was fitted with a heating system made by a company called NIBE. Called an exhaust air source heat pump, it replaces the need for a gas boiler, but performs the same function using electricity instead of gas. It works by taking the heat from the waste air leaving your house and then pumps it back into your home to help provide heating and hot water. Very clever, and all being well, extremely energy efficient. But Sam's certainly wasn't. She spoke to her housing association, who arranged for an engineer to visit.
The engineer came out to see us and he told us that our ducts in the ceiling, which recycle the warm air, were not open properly and therefore not working.
At first it seemed that the explanation was that their eco-efficient system had not been set up properly. And as a result, the family's bills were almost 4 times higher than expected. So with the problem seemingly solved, Sam was reassured that she'd soon be getting much smaller bills.
We set our direct debit for around £75 a month and we felt that would more than cover what we needed.
But an unexpected call from her electricity company soon proved that the problem had not been resolved at all. Sam was told that her direct debit was not covering her costs, and in fact, she was building up a big debt.
We owed in the region of £1,500. Our only choice was to pay half of that or go on a key meter. Once we were put onto a key meter, it became absolutely clear that this system was far from economical and was in fact costing us a fortune to run.
Soon, Sam was struggling to keep up with her bills and was forced to make some very difficult decisions.
Over Christmas, it very quickly became £10 a day and I was horrified. In fact, when I realised this, I turned our heating off and the choice was we eat or we keep warm.
And across the estate, other residents were facing similarly tough choices. Their houses had also been fitted with the same, apparently energy-efficient heating system, yet they too were being hit with huge energy bills. Instead of saving them money, the heating system was actually costing them a lot more.
Most estates, people talk about the weather, daily things. On this estate, we all talk about the NIBE boilers.
It's very expensive. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, to be honest.
I've ended up in tears plenty of occasions on the phone to my electric company when they're saying you've got to pay this, and I'm saying I physically can't.
In the system's user guide, manufacturers NIBE say that it's designed to run 24 hours a day, which is the most efficient and cost-effective way to heat a home. That's why it's become a popular choice with developers who are now legally obliged to make new build houses more green. So how could a system that's supposed to be more economical instead be forcing people into debt with their energy providers? Experts who've looked at this system have told us that its main pump simply is not big enough to heat most UK homes. As a result, its backup immersion heater can kick in. And though that's only supposed to be used sparingly, in the homes of Sam and her neighbours, it seems to be doing most of the job, using much more electricity and causing very high bills. So why did the Housing Association agree to this system being fitted in the first place?
NIBE came down, did presentations to our technical staff, provided us with comparable information of how their system costs weighed up against conventional electric and gas systems, gave us examples of heating bills from a system which was claimed to already be in use, all of which was quite convincing. And it's just that the subsequent experience of our tenants was that none of this was the case.
The Housing Association is so concerned about the effect that all of this has had on residents like Sam that it's paid out over £45,000 so far to help with their high bills.
We understand that our residents are very angry in some cases about the experiences that they've been through because of the NIBE system. And rightly so, frankly. We, as a housing association, are very, very frustrated that our residents have had to experience all of this and that it has taken far too long to get it resolved with NIBE and with the contractors.
We spoke to manufacturer NIBE, and they told us that though they're concerned to hear about individual cases where consumers are unhappy, there are many thousands of exhaust air heat pumps in use across the UK, and independent research shows them to be both effective and economic. As far as they're concerned, any problems are almost always due to poor specification, installation or maintenance, and not the systems themselves. NIBE are adamant that they did not give the Housing Association any information as to the expected running costs of the units, and they thoroughly reject any allegation of misrepresentation. They say they were given the wrong specifications for around 12 properties at Love's Farm, and that residents were not trained in using the system. So, while they don't consider themselves responsible, they say they are working hard to ensure that these problems are resolved quickly. Meanwhile, the development company that installed the NIBE system at Love Farm agrees that not all were correctly fitted and says that they're pursuing every avenue to find a satisfactory solution.
Where's the digger?
There.
Well done.
For Sam, that can't come soon enough. Already struggling with the effects of this for the last 2 years, she's desperate for it to be sorted out before another winter comes.
We have had to make stark choices between heating and other costs. We have other bills that we've had to pay later. We have small children who deserve to be warm and have hot water, and that's not something that I've always been able to provide for them, and that's not right.
Can you see?
Well, later in the programme, we'll be visiting another estate that's had exactly the same problem and discovering what happened there when the residents decided that, frankly, they were not prepared to put up with it any longer.
Earlier in the programme, we heard from families whose new homes had been fitted with a heating system which they'd hoped would bring their bills down, but in fact turned out to be pushing them up. So much so that some of them told us that they'd had to make tough decisions about whether they could afford to keep warm. Well, that same heating system has been installed in new estates across the country, and one has already been forced into taking drastic action. The 69 houses here on the Castlefield estate in Runcorn are among thousands of new homes across the UK fitted with what sounds like an ingenious way to heat your home. An eco-friendly system that, if used correctly, can lead to significant savings in heating costs. So, why are these homes having them all ripped out? When Karen Gerard moved into her new house here, the idea of paying less for her energy was a huge part of the appeal.
I couldn't wait to get a house and a garden because I want to start a family, and when we heard about the energy efficient and the solar panels and everything, I thought, well, it's a bonus, you know, it's going to be cheap to live there as well.
That was certainly the idea. Designed to provide affordable and sustainable housing, the homes on the estate were kitted out with what's called an exhaust air source heat pump system. Made by the Swedish company NIBE, it's exactly the same heating system we heard about earlier in the programme on an estate in Cambridgeshire. And here in Runcorn, some residents started experiencing the same problems. Instead of saving money as they'd expected, Karen and others began receiving huge energy bills. Karen was told her electricity would cost around £320 a year, but in fact, her bills added up to £1,200.
We thought, how are we going to pay that? I thought there must have been a mistake somewhere, so we phoned the electricity company. And they really didn't care, really, they just wanted the money.
Just over the road, Dennis Cullen, who pays monthly, had also received a bill that was higher than expected.
I got a bill for £88, which I thought was a bit extortionate, and I was used to a £50 bill. As far as the heating would go, I was told that this property would be approximately 3 times cheaper than any other system.
And it's because it's considered so cost-effective that over the last 6 years, an estimated 15,000 of these NIBE systems have been fitted in homes across the country. But here at Rip Off Britain, we've heard from desperate residents on estates up and down the UK who've told us that their eco-friendly heating has done the opposite of what they'd hoped and pushed their bills up instead of down. So what's gone wrong? Jeff Morgan is an independent heating engineer. He says that the system is at its most efficient in homes with a very high standard of insulation, which is much more the case in Sweden, where NIBE is based, than in the UK. In a home that isn't insulated so well, the system's heat pump may have to work overtime, forcing it to rely on the expensive backup immersion heater.
When these are used in Sweden, the heat losses of the houses are much, much less, and the heat pump does a much bigger job, and the immersion heater does a very small amount of topping up.
So in the homes that we've heard about, a system that residents had hoped was energy efficient has turned out to be totally inefficient, racking up huge bills in the process. On the Castlefield estate, the level of complaints led Housing Association Plus Dane to try to get to the bottom of what was going on. But that meant upheaval and uncertainty for residents.
Different people were telling me different things all the time. We had loads of fellas down from, I think Sweden, I think they came from, saying we were using it wrong, and they put meters in every bedroom and every laptops everywhere and wires everywhere.
In May 2011, a lifeline was thrown to the residents. Plus Dane said that though they didn't accept liability for all this, they would pay their electricity bills from the time they'd moved in 5 months earlier. It was a huge help, but it didn't solve the problem.
Bills are still coming in high, so I was going down to the house and I said, what are you going to do about these bills?
In December 2011, after a year of sky-high bills and at the start of another winter, the Housing Association decided to take more drastic action.
We were called for an emergency meeting, and within 10 minutes, the manager that was sent from Plus Dane had agreed that by spring 2012, the NIBE systems would be taken out.
Agreeing the system didn't seem to be performing the way it was supposed to, in March this year, Plus Dane started ripping out all the estate's NIBE heat pumps, replacing them with standard gas-fired combi boilers. Although cheaper for the residents to run, that came at a cost to the Housing Association of £145,000, and that was on top of the money they'd agreed to compensate each household until the system was replaced. It's a huge relief for residents like Karen.
I'm so made up that we won't get all these big bills coming in anymore. It was stressing us out. Trying to find money to pay the bills, it's terrible.
The housing associations told us they're negotiating with all parties involved to see how they can recover their costs. They say all the indications had been that these systems would perform well and achieve the low energy ratings required. But the costs were considerably more than the manufacturer claimed. Meanwhile, Jeff Morgan is concerned that some of the other 15,000 households with the NIBE system may also be paying a high price for what they thought would be a low-cost energy solution.
All sorts of people have been persuaded to use these systems in the belief that they're low running cost. At the end of the day, the systems quite simply have not produced the expectations of running cost.
But manufacturers NIBE told us they don't promote their systems on the basis of cost saving, although they insist big savings can be made when it's installed and used correctly. They disagree with the opinions of Jeff Morgan, saying there is ample independent research demonstrating the efficiency and effectiveness of this system in the UK, and point out that they're one of Europe's leading suppliers of heating systems and a leader in renewable technologies. They reiterate that when problems occur, it's almost always due to poor specification, installation and maintenance, and that residents are often not shown how to use the system properly. They've suggested incorrect usage was a particular problem on this estate, and as such, the systems didn't need to be removed. But residents like Dennis say they wish they'd never had it in the first place.
Somebody, somewhere, agreed to buy a system which they believed would be right for the tenants. In fact, the system was completely the opposite.